Excellent. So it's my delight then to, oh, sorry, I just need to find my place. So welcome then to, I think, the penultimate session today. It's a delight to welcome, is Sophia here? I can't see her on the screen. Oh yes, Theodore, brilliant, marvelous, super. Okay, we start properly now. Excellent. So welcome to the session. So I'm here to introduce Sofia Puchkova, who's currently working as a research associate at Leicester University on an ERC-funded project on domestic slavery. And she's going to be sharing with us today something about her book, Re-envisioning Theodore, Theodore of Mopsuestia's biblical exegesis in his Catechetical Homilies, which is based on her dissertation, her PhD dissertation, which she defended in Leuven in 2022. If you want the code for the book, it's 72525 for a 25% discount at the Brill web shop. And it's valid until the 31st of December this year. It's a wonderful book. It's based on extremely thorough groundwork, but it includes really it's analyzed to bring out really thought-provoking questions in the way we study patristic exegesis, the relationship between the Antiochene and the Alexandrian traditions, the questions about how we think about the relationship between literal and allegorical exegesis, between exegetical traditions and exegetical methods. And she encourages us to think about things like the role of genre in exegesis, the role of the liturgical context, and the significance of networks in transmitting theology and liturgy and catechesis across geographical space. In the supporting materials at the end, there is an exhaustive catalogue of Theodore's exegesis of biblical passages in the Catechetical Homilies, which is a remarkable resource and a testimony to her diligence. But there's a lot more in this book than just laborious footwork. It's a really thought-provoking and interesting book about how we think about exegesis and how we study it in this period. And I'm going to hand over to her straight away.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to the organizers as well to accepting me here. And I'm really excited to present my book. But I'll start actually with the simple thing is just introducing the author, the introducing Theodore of Mopsuestia, because I imagine that not that many people actually know how Theodore is important. He's actually a figure of the same degree as John Chrysostom and Augustine, maybe, but his works are not surviving in Greek, almost not surviving in Greek, because of his condemnation at the Second Council of Constantinople in the 6th century. My work that I studied actually in this book is surviving in Syriac, and there are works that are surviving in Latin as well. So study Theodore, you need to know things anyway. It started with my PhD dissertation, as Jane already mentioned, and the book itself, it has a certain mission. It should actually, I don't know how it actually worked out, but anyway, it should have challenged a contemporary consensus that exists around Theodore of Mopsuestia and Antiochene school in general. And the consensus is just to think about the exegesis of such exegesis as Theodore in a certain way that this is like the literal and historical exegesis, meaning that historical is not like the history as we understand it now as a scholarship, and Theodore is not a historian or a biblical critic, but he's a biblical interpreter from the late antiquity who was very much attentive to the narrative of the Bible. This is something that makes his exegesis really literal looking, let's say. He was very much attentive to the so-called history of the Bible, the narrative, the factuality of the events described in the narrative. So history is the technical term that the Antiochenes used to designate this idea of factuality. There is another side of this historical exegesis is the Theodore's particular tendency to pay attention to the setting of the biblical events. So he contextualizes events in history as he understood it, and provides some historical comments on dating, chronology, even some, he's not limited to historical comments, he's just giving some geographical comments and so on. But the thing is that the most important thing to know is that this data that I've just described, this knowledge we gathered from the analysis of Theodore's commentaries on the Bible, so a genre of commentaries. And here actually my book steps into picture. It introduces the new material in the scholarship, the material of Theodore's Catechetical Homilies. So it's a homiletic exegesis. It's a very particular one that if compared with his exegesis in his commentaries, actually doesn't really pay much attention to the setting of the biblical events, doesn't give a lot of historical comments, and Theodore perhaps thinks that his catechumens don't really need to know a lot of details about biblical history, but what they need to know creed, they need to know sacraments and how to understand sacraments. So he teaches theology and uses the Bible in order to support his own teaching, to make it more authoritative, let's say. And he quotes the Bible, he interprets the Bible in a way that it aligns with his own theology. So he uses his theology as a certain hermeneutical key for the biblical interpretation. So it's this way how he proceeds with the biblical exegesis in the homilies. So these are these exegetical passages in the homilies. They are mainly a certain small or large exegetical digressions in a theological manner, let's say. That's one thing that I think it's important to highlight, and that my book actually wanted to argue for the, let's say, the existence of the genre bias in the scholarship that focused only on the Theodore's commentaries, and disregards in a way the homilies of the same author and the exegesis in these homilies. That's one thing, and the difference between the exegesis on the same biblical texts in different genres. So the difference might be really striking if one thinks that in one genre, the author pays attention to the setting of the Bible, to the historical background and context. And on the other hand, the same author deals with the same biblical text absolutely differently in a theological manner in his homilies. Another thing that I would like to highlight about my book is that in the final part, in the final chapter, I discuss a lot Theodore's exegesis in the broader tradition. So I would like to really to show how these exegetical networks worked, how Theodore actually placed in a bigger network of the Pro-Niceans. He himself was a Pro-Nicene, and how he actually based on the same exegetical traditions that the Pro-Niceans used, and how he drew inspiration from that, as well as from his local liturgy, his Greek-Assyrian liturgy, uses liturgical metaphors and incorporates them in his biblical interpretation. So it's quite interesting because we don't really see a lot of biblical exegesis that really comes so close to the liturgy. So we see a lot of exegesis in the liturgical text, but the fact that the liturgical metaphors actually taken from the liturgy and serves as a certain exegetical tool or fulfills a certain role inside the biblical interpretation, what is theological educational purposes. That is something totally different, and we don't really have a lot of research on that. That one thing also I would like to highlight, if I still have time, maybe final phrase on that, that the research on biblical exegesis, biblical patristic exegesis, usually focused on this opposition between the Alexandrine and Antiochian school, and I personally don't really like it because this reduces the like a really full spectrum of exegesis that existed in the Eastern Mediterranean in late antiquity to just two different schools who differs in methods. So these are basically the very technical research about the methodology and about these two. So the reductionist approach is so clear to me that we need to, in a way, overcome it by paying attention to other exegetes outside the school. For instance, like Cappadocian fathers, then exegetes on the West. We forgot about them. Then they speak about Alexandrine and Antiochian school. We forget about the fact that there are other exegetes on the West as well, and they are not included in a way, and they should be included, as well as the fact that then we focus on the methodology a lot. We forget about the fact that ideas travel and exegetical traditions, the ideas, this imagery actually travels inside this certain network, and they don't really relate to the methodological questions. So they are adopted without any regard to the question of, is it literal or is it allegorical? This particular exegetical tradition can be used in the both contexts and by some authors of the totally different schools like Antiochian and Alexandrian. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. That's a wonderful presentation that brings out very immediately a lot of the richness of this book. There's a lot going on in this book. Questions, the floor is open for questions. Please do put them in the chat or raise or put a Q I suppose if you want to speak, or in the Q&A set box. We've got a few minutes still, and we started very slightly late, so while we're waiting, Sophia, what do you think was most important to Theodore in his exegesis, in these homilies? What was his main aim?
Oh, thank you. I think it was necessary to highlight that as well. Basically, his main idea is just to make the Bible in a way. I think it's a difficult thing to say, but really to serve his own aims in a way. Then I just see it. Then compare his commentaries on the same Bible, on the same biblical text, with the, for instance, in the commentaries and in the homilies, and we'll see that actually in the commentaries it looks like Theodore is serving to the biblical text, and in the homilies it's biblical text that is serving him something. For instance, supporting his theological points or illustrating something that is difficult to really illustrate in a different way. So, so I think it's more about really supporting theology and making clear for the exegete that he is based on the Bible. He is, in a way, trustworthy, and catechumens should trust him. You can also develop it in a way that since he's teaching in the context of a recent Arian crisis, and something is still going on, and we can imagine different Christian groups are also quite active around. And he is saying, by interpreting the Bible and integrating so many passages in his catechetical homilies, just saying that I'm actually biblical theologian, so I actually follow the Bible, I follow the truth. And my theology is a trustworthy theology and truthful theology. I think we should start from that. Then they think about how the catechists worked at that time. So
Yeah. Thank you. We're on 4 o'clock, but we did start slightly late. I don't know whether the organizers want us to carry on for a few minutes, or we've got a question in the chat. Shall we take that one and then stop? So from
I think
Aaron
maybe
Thomas,
the last one, yeah.
do you want to read it out? Shall I? If we break down the
I don't
distinction
really
between
see it.
Well, I'll read it out. It's if we break down the distinction between literal and allegorical interpreters or Alexandrian and Antiochian schools, and I completely agree that we should, then how do we understand the importance of the historical or literal aspect of scriptures in relation with tricky exegetes like Theodore?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your question. It's a long one. I think I can really talk a lot about that. But if we just start, I prefer actually to start, then we think about the schools. I prefer to start with the particular theologians, particular exegetes, because they compose the school. They kind of they are the most they are participants of all these the groups, these interpretive communities like Antiochian school. And if we actually look at Theodore as like a theologian without this label Antiochian and um, historian, historical or literal exegete, we just see a person for whom the biblical narrative itself is very much important. And it's crucial for him because his doctrines are derived from the Bible. It's something how he sees it from the Bible, from the narrative of the Bible itself, as we actually look at it and read it. So I think that's his way of indicating where the truth lies is the most important point. And for him, the truth lies in the narrative, in the written text. If we think about Origin, for instance, or any other Alexandrian exegete, it might be that the truth lies somewhere in the mind of the spirit. It's something like slightly in a different place. I'm not talking that Theodore actually denies the spiritual part of the Bible, but for him, it's important that that narrative itself that we have in front of us, it's actually it's actually about Christ. It's about the salvation history, and he thinks that his own teaching actually based on that. And if we demolish this narrative with the help of allegory or whatever, so his teaching and the truth will be demolished. So I think we should really think about how they themselves, particular exegetes, thought about where the truth lay.
Excellent, thank you. It's a huge question to try to answer very
Yeah, so it's just
briefly. So no, thank you.
really a lot.
It's a helpful way into it that you've given to us, and thank you for this glimpse of a
Thank you so
really
much.
rich book, which raises a lot of challenging questions and gestures towards ways forward on the basis of Theodore's really interesting text. And thank you for sharing that with us, Sophia. I'm going to step back now for the next presentation, but thank you.